All right, Leader, we're now live. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to start by welcoming those members of the public and press who are watching this live stream of this meeting through the Council's YouTube page. You will all be aware that the meeting is virtual in line with the government's guidance. Members, please could you keep your video cameras switched on at all times with your microphones muted except when invited to speak. You can indicate your wish to speak by raising your virtual hand. I will then invite you to speak. Please unmute your microphone and make your comment or question, and then mute yourself again. Should you encounter any technical problems, I may adjourn the meeting while these are addressed. And if all connections failed and we are unable to reconnect, then the Democratic Services will contact you. Finally, I would remember members that all virtual meetings are recorded. So if I could now hand over to Democratic Services and Ms. Turvey, could you please do the roll call of members?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so Councillor Ayres, if you can confirm whether you're present, please.
Present, yeah.
Councillor Bashir.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Sereste.
He's been stamped on. Arco.
Present.
Thank you, Councillor Sereste. Councillor Farouk.
Present, Pippa.
Thank you. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Yes, present, Pippa. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hiller.
Yes, I'm here, Pippa.
Thank you. Councillor Holditch, you are here.
Present, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Seaton.
Present, thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Walsh.
Yes, present.
Thank you. That's everyone expected present, Chair.
Okay. Apologies.
Yes, Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Allen this afternoon.
Okay, he's on duty in the Combined Authority Housing meeting at the same time. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest from members, pecuniary or otherwise? Can't see any indication. Okay, so we're going to reordered agenda. We're going to go into corporate strategy, which is found on page 3 to 5. I'm going to ask Amanda Askham to introduce this. This takes your policies forward into next year. So very important document. So Amanda.
Thank you very much, Leader. Good afternoon, Cabinet. Thank you for inviting me to come and present the draft corporate strategy for 2021 to 2025. My colleague Ray Hook has also joined us for this item. Ray's done a lot of work on the strategy and particularly on the corporate performance framework. So if you have any questions on that, Ray and I will support you with those. So this strategy for 2021 is being presented in draft today. It's been developed over the last 6 months, but it does draw on learning and experiences from the last 2 years. The strategy reflects the Council's focus on better outcomes coupled with a strong financial grip. It builds on the fantastic community, business and partner engagement that we always see and prepares us for the best possible recovery from the pandemic. In developing the strategy, this cabinet, working with the senior management team, were very clear that it is important to have a strategy which clearly articulates an ambitious, forward-looking vision for Peterborough, particularly at this time. But we agreed it was also important to acknowledge the challenges that we face and to create an honest starting point for innovation, new approaches as Peterborough looks to the future. The strategy builds on the successes and progress that the Council and the City have made so far. It sets out how we plan to respond to the new challenges and opportunities we see coming out of the pandemic. And it signals a strong commitment to Peterborough, its communities and the environment across its priority outcomes. Those outcomes are pride in our communities, our places and our environment, first-rate futures for our children and young people, quality support for adults and the elderly, better jobs, good homes, and improved opportunities for all. By focusing on these priority outcomes, we hope the City will see a strong recovery from the coronavirus pandemic and a thriving future for those who live, work and visit in the City. The strategy builds on good practice, strong leadership and fantastic collaboration. To continue that excellent engagement with our communities, I'd ask Cabinet to consider and endorse this strategy and allow us to take it forward for consultation with partners, our workforce, and of course, our communities. So Ray and I are happy to answer any questions that you may have from the strategy document or the covering report. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Councillor Seaton, please.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Amanda. One very minor point. When you look at the council website and the agenda for today, it says Corporate Strategy 2019-21. Then underneath it has the draft strategy clearly as 2021-25. So we just need to change it on the council website. I'd be interested if you could just articulate what the key changes are from previous strategies in this new draft, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Seaton, and well spotted. We'll get that the date changed. The strategy is definitely 21 to 25. I think before I go on to the key changes, it's important to point out that this council has always put communities and outcomes at the very heart of its work. So this strategy builds on that. You'll see a lot of continuity between previous corporate strategies and previous priorities in putting those community outcomes at the heart of everything we do. But what is really different here is the learning from the last year. The pandemic has really tested and accelerated our work, both with communities and partners. So we know what's possible when we gather around a common purpose. And these priorities that you see before you today are really carefully chosen to push forward the things that we can achieve when we work together. We're going to really focus on the opportunities for change that are coming out of the pandemic. And additionally, we're in a very different financial position to where we were when the last strategy was developed. So it's more important than ever that we continue to make improvements in the way that we deliver services, that we continue to be innovative, and we continue to scrutinise everything we do. This is reflected in the design themes on page 17 of your pack. So this is really a strategy for today, for coming out of coronavirus really well, for looking towards the future and being ambitious about what we can achieve for Peterborough.
Okay, David, happy with that?
Yes, I've got a couple of other questions, Leader, but I'll save those for later. Let someone else get in. Thank you.
Lady Ayres.
Thank you, Leader. Amanda, I'm delighted to see that there's a real focus on children in this strategy. Can you tell me how this work will be turned into action?
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor. It's always an important point about taking a strategy document with big ambitions and then turning it into proper action plans that help us to make choices on the ground in our everyday work. And I hope that you'll see already that some of that clear statement and ambition for the children of Peterborough is coming through in some of the action plans that you'll have seen coming to Cabinet over the last 6 months. So we've got things like our Best Start in Life programme, which brings together a range of partners across all sorts of public sector, lots of our health colleagues, and that's looking at the lifetime support for a young person from pre-birth through to adolescence. So you'll see in all of those strategies and action plans an absolutely golden thread of those best opportunities for children in Peterborough.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, very much so. Thank you very much, Amanda.
Thank you. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Amanda, hi. The covering report talks about a strong COVID recovery, and I know you chair our recovery board, Amanda. So could you tell us about where these priority areas will help Peterborough to build back better?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. I hope you see written large across all of this the Cabinet and the senior leadership's ambition for a really positive future for Peterborough. And there are lots of ambitious things in there, working with partners, working with our communities. And I think one of the things that underpins that, you'll see on page, I think it's page 17 in the design principles, we talk a lot about understanding and meeting needs. So we've done a lot of work during the last 6 months on a needs assessment, particularly around vulnerable people. And we're seeing from that the impacts on particular groups, particular families, down to individual level. Lots of people who haven't engaged with council before, haven't needed support before. And that's allowing us to target our support and our community resource around different groups in a much better way. So we're really looking positively at need and understanding where we can get in there and do something from the new opportunities that are created. I think the other thing that we're looking at closely is the opportunities around the environment. So there's been a lot of discussion about the changes that people have made during the pandemic, during lockdown. What of that can we take forward into really positive view? You'll know that this council is already very committed to environmental issues, and actually there are opportunities opening up for new discussion, which Steve Cox and his team have taken forward into a bold new strategy. So there's lots of parts here of the recovery work that you'll see reflected in these priorities, and I think the most important thing is for this cabinet to set that bold vision of busy shopping streets, open green spaces, a really strong culture and leisure offer. All that will have to be right at the heart of our recovery work.
Thank you. Happy with that, Councillor Fitzgerald?
Yeah, all good, Mr. Leader. Sorry, I was nodding. Yep.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Suresti next. Go to the hands.
Thank you, Leader. First of all, Amanda, well done. Good report. Makes good reading, and I obviously agree with everything you say, really. There's something I'd wanted to add, which is a very current topic at the moment. You will recall, or most of you will recall, the last time we had a discussion about Christmas lights and lighting in the city centre. I said that I wanted to try and create a corridor because we're trying to create the cafe culture, evening entertainment, and evening access to the city centre. I wanted to try and create a safe corridor from particular car parks in the city centre throughout the whole of the city centre, where women in particular could feel that they were safe to walk and safe to participate in what we're providing. What's happened in the last few days just strengthens that view in my mind, and that's one of the things that I would really love Amanda and the team to consider, because we have got to do that. You know, if we want a vibrant city centre that works and is inviting and what have you, we can't say, well, single women walking through the city centre feel uncomfortable. Can't have that. So we need to make sure that single women wanting to use our city centre feel comfortable and are willing and feel safe to do so. So, you know, we're going to have to find some more money, unfortunately. This is what it all comes down to, is it's all about lighting, probably improving our CCT surveillance, and we might only be able to do that in, you know, with 2 different car parks, perhaps the Haven and something else, to give people a choice as to where they put their cars. And we may even have to consider the cost of a couple of wardens walking through the streets in the evening. So, you know, I would like you to take that away and think about it. And that's also a message for you, Mr. Carpenter, I'm afraid, because it's your pocket I'm trying to rob. And, you know, but we do need to do this. I'm even more convinced now that our strategy, the thing we all talked about, creating a safe passage from a car park through into the city centre for people to want to use it at night, is now even more important than we even thought. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Very topical. Councillor Walsh?
Yes, thank you, Leader. Yeah, I'd just like to say how pleased I am that the Think Communities approach comes out so clearly in this document.
Yeah.
Because I can remember the time when people were saying, what is Think Communities? And I think now it's really embedded in our kind of corporate thinking. And, you know, it's really important in terms of partnerships, joint working, and leveraging capacity in the community. So my question is, given the complexity of what we're trying to do, because what we're saying is we're not going to do this on our own as the council, we're doing this in cooperation with other entities. How does the performance work on that? How do we monitor how well we're doing? I guess that's a question for Ray, the expert on data.
Right.
Yeah, I'm happy, very happy to take that one. So we've developed a performance framework which provides insight across a range of services, particularly across the main funding streams relating to the council. Members will already be familiar with using key performance indicators within their own portfolio areas. What we really want to do is bring this together to provide a strong performance reporting so that Cabinet can take a strategic view across all portfolios and consider it in even more of a strategic context. By bringing it all together and having that strategic view and allowing us to review performance, we'll make sure that we're monitoring and delivering on our aims and continuing to make progress towards the vision, priorities and objectives. Additionally, performance overviews will be provided to Cabinet to review the performance of any particular area in detail within the context of the overall strategy. Does that answer your question, Councillor Walsh?
Yes, it does. I'm looking forward to seeing the first performance report. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you, Ray. All right. Okay, I've got Wendy, you wanted to speak?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Ray said, because I think it's really important that we're also capturing the lived experience of our residents, Irene, in terms of the services that we're actually providing. So that's really important to go alongside the statistical data as well.
Thank you, and thanks for yesterday. David Seaton.
Thank you, Leader. First, I'd absolutely endorse what Councillor Chireste said about the safety of the city centre, the safety of our streets. And you pointed, Councillor Chireste, towards Pete Carpenter and funding on it. It strikes me that there is a discussion there to be had with MHCLG, but we need to get our act together with the police and other services to really understand what it is we need to do to make our streets safe, what the funding would be to deliver that. And then that's a discussion we need to have with MHCLG about future revenue funding. And as the Leader said, very topical, and I think that's a discussion they would welcome. Second point I'd make is I think as this moves forward into action plans, as we look at some of the big projects, the Northminsters and Northwest Gates, the word that strikes me is aspiration. Let's be aspirational about what we can deliver for the city. But lastly, Amanda, I'd just be interested, as we're going to send this out to consultation for people watching this or people who see that it's been published. How will that consultation work and how will people be able to have their say? Thank you, Leader.
Can I just add to that? Can we get this out before PERDA so it can be discussed?
So, yeah, thank you. The consultation process, we usually work very closely with Christine Birchall and colleagues in the comms team to make sure that we follow an appropriate comms process, which usually is having something available on our website and then links through various forms of social media, all the channels that we know work well into our communities. So we'll make sure, I'll pick that up with Christine straight after this meeting, and we'll make sure that we can get that out as soon as possible.
Because you don't have a lot of time between now and PERDA. Had you finished, Dave?
I'd love to have the opportunity, Amanda, just to share some groups with you that it would be interesting to talk to and get a slightly different view on the city. But thank you. Yes, Leader. Thank you.
That would be great, and welcome from everyone, of course. That'd be really useful. Thank you.
Okay. Marco, did you want to come back, or is that a...
Yes, please, Leader. Just very, very quickly, just to say that I've already opened a discussion with Peter about, and Peter will tell us what the name of this new grant is, the Build Back Grant or whatever it is, and it would seem that one of the projects that we can add to that particular grant application would be just the one that I've just outlined about security for the city centre, and then build on that for future revenue. But at least we might be able to get the capital for that very, very, very quickly to do the immediate work as we then prepare for everything else.
I dare say you'll have a conversation on that build back fund, because you're only allowed one per authority, I think, and you're only allowed one in the combined authority area, so for each city. So you can't all have a go at it. It's got to be one project. But that'll unfold, I'm sure.
Well, whatever it is, leader, I'm sure that Peter and I and David will make sure we get the the most we possibly can out of it for the city of Peterborough.
Probably find it's already been spent. Yeah,
more than likely.
Probably 10 times. Yeah, okay. But I agree with you. We need to get some priority on that. And there are other funds. It doesn't have to be out of that. So, okay, members, there are no revised recommendation, but your recommendation is on page 3. Can I have a proposal for it, please?
Happy to do that, John.
Right, Councillor Fitzgerald, seconder, please.
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. All in favour? Okay. Anybody against? That's easier, isn't it? Okay, we'll go to monitoring items then. Budget control report. Councillor Seaton.
Thank you, Leader. This is our regular report setting out the impact of COVID. Our separate report to government was made on the 26th February and used data up to the middle of that month. Our COVID pressures remain pretty constant. With direct and ring-fenced grant from government, our net pressure has decreased from 5.4 million to 4.7 million, and our funding percentage has increased from 87% to 89%. As set out in the MTFS, we can capitalise up to 4.8 million, which would close that deficit. And we're hopeful we don't have to do that, as it brings additional pressures in future years. Indeed, our updated monitoring projection across all budgets shows a net overspend position to the end of January of 1.4 million, and that's a £2.2 million improvement over December. The key change is a reprofiling of £1.6 million in adults and children's into 21-22, and further efficiencies in ICT costs. The council's overall position is £3.4 million better than the COVID position due to timing differences and reviews indicating slippage of spending. Our projections for year end are difficult as there are significant moving parts, and just to set a few of those out, we're still awaiting around £3.9 million of capital receipts. For example, we're very close to the completion on Posh and also the mill within this financial year, which would mean we'd exceed target. Prior year CCG debt is still around £6 million. We're in negotiations over a settlement linked to ensuring this problem does not repeat itself in future years, and that has to be completed before the year end. The capital programme is significantly underspent, which I think we would expect, and that will affect final minimum revenue provision and other debt management charges. We're still waiting for pensions data, and that could release between £500,000 and £1.5 million of potential liabilities. And as mentioned, COVID projects and their associated costs are starting to slip into 21-22, although some of the funding also slips. With others, it's less clear. So a whole variety of things that may or may not happen before the year end and will affect that final position. Our best view is that the final position will be no more than £2 million overspend, and with a fair wind, we may be close to balance. The updated detailed analysis of under and overspend is contained in Appendix A. Collection rates for council tax is consistent with last month, and for business rates, has improved since November. Council tax currently about 0.9% down. Business rates 16.7% down. We're also paying out numerous grants directly to businesses and individuals. So the test and trace payments of £500 to residents who have to isolate and lose income. We've paid out 961 of those, which I think is almost as good as the rest of Cambridgeshire combined. Local restrictions support grants to businesses closed since the November lockdown. We've made 3,075 payments totaling £10.6 million. And business support, which is the additional restrictions grant that was launched in December, 567 payments have been made, totaling almost 1.5 million. And that now includes 424 payments to taxi drivers. Finally, reserve levels are projected at £8 million usable and a general fund balance of £6 million at the end of March 2021. Cabinet are asked to note the recommendations in this report, especially the requirement to continue to work for additional government funding to minimise the effects of COVID on our finances. Thank you, Leader. Happy to take any questions.
Right, members, do you have any questions? Yeah, so can I have Councillor Seresti?
Thank you, Leader. How concerned are you on the collection of business rates, David?
Well, I think on the upside, it's good that the government has given further support to local businesses. I think that's really positive. On the downside, clearly, the longer that sort of fall in business rates collection goes on for, the bigger the issue we've got. And again, something we need to talk to government about. A point I would make is we're very open to discussions with any business that has got an issue paying the business rates. We're not going to come in with a big boot. We will talk to you, we'll try and agree repayment plans, and let's work together is the message I'd give out. Peter, did you want to add anything to that?
Thank you, Councillor Seaton. I think just two things. I'd agree, the Breathing Space initiative, which is at the moment coming out and looking to help people who are in trouble in this second year as we move towards the end and out of COVID, is going to be quite pronounced, probably more pronounced than any of the arrangements we made to people and businesses last year. I'm still concerned that really funding is still only hitting probably a third of our businesses, and the other 2/3 really have not had very much support at all. Even with the discretionary schemes we have, they are very small compared to the compulsory schemes for closed businesses. And so we'll see as we move forward into next year how things actually do pan out, because there's a lot of people out there still struggling, and we just need to take account of that.
Thank you both. Peter, Hilla?
Thank you, Leader. David's covered the first part of my question, which was going to be the year-end position, but using 4.8 million.
Can't hear you.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Can now.
Right. Do you think we'll need to use the 4.8 million potential capitalisation?
Peter, do you want to respond to that initially? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Peter Carpenter.
Councillor, yes, thank you for that. We're hoping not to, because if we do use a capitalisation direction, obviously it costs us ongoing with the debt charges. And so we'll try our hardest to use our money in the most effective ways, both for government funding and everything else, to minimise any impact on this year, and also that we come out next year with no detriment as well in terms of all grants and everything else. So we are working towards bringing that down to a manageable level.
Thanks, Pete.
Peter, didn't you really mean that you will continue to use the money in the most effective ways to bring it down?
Correct, Leader.
Thank you very much. Okay. Next one I have is Councillor Bashir.
Thank you, Leader. How effective are the grants being distributed to local businesses?
Peter or David?
Oh,
Do you want to start, Peter?
yes, certainly. Thank you, Councillor Seaton. I think with closed businesses, we've been fairly effective in terms of the money going out. Businesses have signed up and money has gone out and continues to go out on a 2-weekly and monthly cycle. I think we have more difficulty with the discretionary schemes, which is far less money in overall terms because more people are applying and we're having to go through more checks. Also, the playing field seems to have changed over the last 2 weeks, especially after the Chancellor's statement, whereas a lot of these grants, the discretionary ones, were meant to last until the 31st of March 22. Now we understand we need to spend them as quickly as possible so that we can apply for additional grants for the new year. And so we're having to just relook at our approach for that to make sure that we spend in a accountable way, but in a shorter time scale now than we were going to do originally. So that's a real change over the last 2 weeks, whereas we were looking to finish the last year and a quarter. Now we need it to be gone quite quickly. So we do need to improve in that area now quite significantly, as we've only spent about half the money.
Thank you, Peter. Councillor Mohammed Farouk.
Thank you, Leader. I think this question might be for Pete again. Pete, among other things with COVID, I think one of the biggest impacts has been the capital delivery of the capital programme. What can we do to improve that capital delivery programme performance, Pete?
Thank you, Councillor Farouk. I think it links to some things that Amanda and Ray said earlier on. It's linking performance to where we are and being realistic. I think we've got difficulties next year, although the capital programme is going to be slightly different because we have the Towns Fund, which is significant spend in a different area. We've got 4 schools we've got to build, which again is spend in slightly different areas. I think where we have the issues going forward is generally on the more mundane capital programme. We saw a lot of slippage earlier this year because we just couldn't get out and build. I think one of the things maybe where we can improve this in the future is having another indicator, which is physical completion and where we are physically on schemes, which then links to the financial as well, which gives us a better, your money's always going to lag by maybe up to 6 weeks. If you know physically where you are correctly on the jobs, it gives you much better insight into where you should be.
Thank you. I've just got a quick follow-up question, John. So if due to COVID, we haven't been able to do a much capital investment, will that reduce our future capital programs then? The government or whoever, will they reduce it, or will we still continue to enjoy the large amount of capital program which we have been doing?
Thank you, Councillor Farouk. I don't think it's going to reduce it significantly because we're at a level where we ensure that we maintain the value of our assets. The government wouldn't be very happy if we didn't maintain assets to their present financial values. And again, a lot of the other schemes are either direct government grant funding or we're building schools to school capacity. So we have to do those.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I just wanted to say the additional amount that has been granted us by government to help us in this very challenging time, and for which we are very grateful. How do we receive it, or rather, how and when do we receive it? Do we receive it in one lump sum, or does it come in installments, or, you know, so is there a time frame? And not that I don't think it's coming, I'm sure it's coming. I just wondered how and when.
I think that's definitely a question for Mr. Carpenter.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Seaton. Councillor Walsh, it's interesting. I've been in conversations over the last 2 days with Bexley, Eastbourne, Luton. We're expecting the government to contact us all this week onto the reviews they're going to do for all of those who've been awarded capitalisation direction. That will impact on how, what, where they're looking, who they want to talk to, reviews and where the money will come out in terms of the tranches. So all that will be agreed as part of those. Now they're meant to be fully finalised by late summer. So by that I'm taking before the July recess.
Peter,
Okay.
I think there's an interesting question there that Councillor Walsh was asking. You know, do typically government pay something like this in a lump sum that goes into your reserves, or would we draw it down as the year progresses? Do we have any idea on that point?
At the moment, we don't, David. At the moment, and that is a really good point. Generally speaking, when we get government funding, it would be this sort of thing through Section 31 grant generally, and they give it in tranches. However, it's unclear how they're going to do it at the moment, because you'd want it to match the cash deficit position so that you have no detrimental effect on cash flows. And that's what we expect it to happen. But at the moment, we've had no clarification if that is the way it's going to work.
Okay, does that answer your question, Ori?
Yes, it does. Yes, I feel, yes, much comforted. Thank you.
Right, okay, I think that concludes the main business for today. I'd just like to say this is David and my last cabinet meeting, barring the mishaps, and we'd have to have a special one. So I'd just like to thank on both our behalves all the officers and indeed the rest of the cabinet members for all their support over many years, and indeed especially over the last 12 months when things have been very difficult. So thank you very much for that. And you want to say anything, David?
No, I think you've spoken for me, John. Thank you all. Thank you, officers. Thank you, cabinet colleagues. It's been an absolute pleasure for 12 years now. So thank you, and all the best for the future.
We'll miss you greatly, David, John.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I've concluded everything, Pippa, haven't I?
Yep, all done.
Okay, thank you very much then. Thank you, members. You can have another cup